Thank you very much for this welcoming speech. And now it's time to start with our first panel discussion. So now we transition to the topic, the EU as a pillar of support to Ukraine, or is it really so? And please join me in welcoming our distinguished speakers of this panel. So I would like to welcome here to the stage Ms. Jana Kobzová, Policy Advisor to the Office of the President of the Slovak Republic. I would like to also welcome here Monika Ladmanová, Head of the European Commission Representation to the Czech Republic. I would also like to welcome here Oleksandr Nikolaiev, Deputy Director of the International Cooperation and European Integration from the Ministry for the Communities, Territories and Infrastructure Development of Ukraine. Also Jonas Ohman, founder of NGO Blue Yellow, and Jaroslav Zajíček, Director of the Foreign Policy Department of the Office of the President of the Czech Republic. So please, dear speakers, join us here on the stage. And now I would like to pass the floor to the moderator of this panel debate, Kateřina Šafaříková, European correspondent of Hospodářské noviny Daily and Aktuálně.cz news site.
So I shall stand. Okay, I will then. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Did you sleep well? Your flights were on time? No one? Okay. Okay, so I see you eager to start with Ukrainian discussion right away. I would like to again introduce briefly our panelists. And I start with Monika Ladmanová, the head of the European Commission representation to Czechia. Then Jaroslav Zajíček, Director of the Foreign Policy Department at the Office of the President of Czechia. Jana Kobzová, Policy Advisor to the President, Office of President of Slovakia. Jonas, Ohman, founder of the Blue and Yellow, the NGO, Ukrainian NGO. I said it, Ukrainian. I did. Lithuanian, I got wrong information. My apologies, sorry. And last but not least, Oleksandr Nikolaiev, Deputy Director at the Department of International Cooperation and European Integration at the Ministry for Communities, Territories and Infrastructure of Ukraine. Now I got it right? Ukraine. Okay, perfect. So the topic of our panel is clear too. The title says the EU as a pillar of support to Ukraine, or is it really so? My first question would be to Monika Ladmanová, and let's kick on with looking at the European map as it is now. We had parliamentary elections, was just mentioned shortly by Commissioner Jourová. We are running into a very difficult situation in France, possibly the same difficult situation in Germany. We are running in Europe into a potential blockage at the helm of the European Council or Council of the EU, with Hungarian presidency taking over soon. So my question is, how will the support for Ukraine change within the EU within the next few weeks or months? Monika, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Let's sum up at the beginning. It is now almost 900 days since Russia invaded Ukraine, and the stakes are the same as at the day one. We all know where the parties in the conflict stands. Russia is fighting to end Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting to end war. Russia is fighting for the past. Ukraine is fighting for the future. Russia is to destroy. Ukraine is to defend. So since the beginning, since February 2022 until today, until June 2024, the EU stand united, and it agreed upon and provided and implemented remarkable support in terms of financial, military, economic and humanitarian to Ukraine. It is almost 100 billion euros which are provided for support to Ukraine to win and to defend itself. Only on Monday, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced additional 1.9 billion of euro from Ukrainian facility to be provided. So there is a unanimity and there is an agreement on who is there to defend and who is there to destroy. And this is not going to change, given that the steer for the EU in terms of where it stands is given by the member states. And there, the elections to the European Parliament didn't change, except what you've mentioned for France, but we are not there yet. We don't know the results of the French elections. So my question would be that the support to Ukraine will stand the same. And Slava Ukraine.
Okay. Rather positive note. Okay, so let's see what's the situation on the ground in Ukraine. I would like to ask Jonas if you could brief us shortly on what's going on in Ukraine. As you know, the situation on the ground and even in a battlefield actually quite well. So what is the situation on the ground? Why Ukraine is not winning on battlefield, and what shall be done so that the country can actually cut short the Russian aggression? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, a brief introduction. Myself, Jonas, Ohman, coming from Sweden, living in Lithuania and fighting in Ukraine. With my NGO, we have supported almost 100 million euros of military support to the Ukrainian armed forces for now, at this point. I got pulled out of this war basically by the Lithuanian embassy, flown over here to participate. I thanks very much for that. We fight every day with especially these kind of things, FPV drones, and the European Union and others cannot provide the shells. These come instead. This is a very China-made, by the way, so ironies. Situation is very briefly, it has actually stabilized over the last days because Russia has taken some serious beatings, especially in Kyiv area, but also elsewhere. But that does in no way mean that the war is somewhat, stalled or something. Just got information from Donetsk region area where one of the brigades are really being beaten up by Russian attacks, 3 or 4 per day. The war is on, basically. And I could talk about this for an hour probably, so I don't have the time for that. But
try to be in like 3 minutes.
Very important, yes, very important to say that Ukraine is not losing this war. It's very important to say. They're not winning, but they're definitely not losing. And from a European perspective, I would like to, my main thesis here is basically that we should rather, as bystanders, look at this. We are actually a participant in this war for so many reasons. I really thank you for your introduction. So many things are at stake, and we are a part of it. And we have to admit this, and I think in a much, much deeper and more consecutive level than we're doing at this point. And unfortunately, this is not going to end anytime soon. There are no impediments for any peace agreements or any kinds of, nothing like that at all from either side. This war is here to stay, and we have to participate, we have to be governed. And my main advice to European Union and of course also to other countries in the world that are on the right side, we have to enter Ukraine. We have to be there. We have to get closer to the war for training, for maintenance, for other things as well. And I think this is brewing. I'm very proud that, for instance, Lithuania has taken this decision that they've said that if needed, we will enter. And I think we have to understand that we have to, instead of like waiting and looking at what's going to happen, how this is going to. This is not a football game. This is a war. And in wars, you have to actually deal with it. So that's my brief introduction. Hopefully, I get back on other aspects of this. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Oleksandr, Nikolaiev, if you just listen to what was said, and then if you look at the European map, or say the Western map now, are you seeing a bright future ahead of us, or are you more pessimistic when it comes to the perspective of ending the war the way you want end the war?
Thank you for this question. Of course, we are really grateful for all the supports that we are achieving. The situation is really hard, but we are still fighting. We will fight till the victory, obviously, and of course we are seeking for any type of support from every our partners that we can achieve.
Okay. Jonas said that we have to be closer to Ukraine. We have to be closer to the war, helping with training of Ukrainian troops, etc. Do you agree? Do you approve of that? Do you need us to be there in person and with guns?
This is always, of course, this question is very must be decided on the very high political level. But as I already said, we are seeking for every type of support that we can get. And as everybody is already aware, this is not only our war. This is war of the modern civilized society for its future.
I still stay with you. The reason that for the Western help not coming in sufficient numbers, is it because the West fears more the defeat of Russia than it fears the defeat of Ukraine? What is your take?
Of course, everybody is fearing that the situation can be or similar or something like we had in 1991, but this must not be the obstacle of providing support. The fear of the failing of Russia cannot be some barrier for supporting Ukraine in anyhow.
Thank you. Jaroslav Zajíček, you are employed by the president now, so your daily job is maybe the highest diplomacy ever. So the same question to you. Do you think that the West, the global West, or Western allies of Ukraine, do they fear Russian defeat more than they fear the defeat of Ukraine?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Our role is really to promote that we need to do our utmost to help Ukrainians, because this is about principles, this is about security, not only in Ukraine, but for the whole of our continent. And every leader needs to realize that. Of course, there are different perspectives. Our perspective is quite clear. We try to, since day one, to do whatever we can to help Ukraine and to keep also the tempo in a way. And every multilateral meeting, we just returned from Riga for the B9 summit. We are very strong advocates of the necessity to continue, to avoid the fatigue, to do whatever we can to continue helping our Ukrainian friends with all the means, be it humanitarian, be it economic, but be it military. There we go to the munition initiative that we go. But it's a never-ending task to keep on repeating the narrative. What are our lessons learned? What is at stake? And what needs to be done. So we're going there every day.
Still for you, the Brussels correspondent of the Financial Times, Henry Foy, has written to a newsletter by Hospodářské noviny, so the media that I represent here, that the so-called Czech ammunition initiative, where the Czechia is trying to collect, say, ammunition in third countries, so that it's in a way fading away, that the support from the Western leaders for that initiative is fading away, since the Czech president is one of the top people involved in the initiative. What is your understanding of the situation? Is Henry Foy right that indeed the initiative is losing its political support in the West?
With all due respect to Eric Foy, I think that I strongly disagree with that. And every time we meet with leaders from Europe, but also outside Europe, I got a confirmation that definitely this initiative that has already entered into history is live and kicking, let's put it in these terms. Although I'm not sure if it's really clever to reveal more and more details about the initiative, because others are very closely watching on what we do. What can be said that the first batch are already on the way, let's put it this way, and there will be a regular and steady batches going on every month till the end of the year. We have managed to attract some 1.7 billion euros, which is, I would say, good enough for some 500,000 rounds of 155 ammunition in general terms, and this is very important before the production in Europe and elsewhere really picks up, that we are stepping in, and I believe this can make the difference. So every leader that we talk to is not only appreciating but getting interested. There are 15 countries that have committed. There are more that are interested. So my plea, if I can make any, is to continue with the commitment, deliver on the commitments, and maybe for the second round that is necessary for us to help Ukrainians also next year.
Thank you. The Czech Ammunition Initiative, it's one of the regional initiative for PUSH. So let's stay within region. Jana Kobzová. Obviously, I can reveal this to you. We had a conversation with Jana Kobzová yesterday over the phone, discussing where her response to a question I'm going to ask anyways, where she can lead it, since she's in a very tricky situation as being still within the presidential office, but of the current president that is leaving the office in about 48 hours, 3 days. So yeah. So the question is tricky for you, I acknowledge, but let's try it anyway. I think everyone in this room is interested into knowing whether the new Slovak government is going to be the good old or not so good Hungarian government. So to say, we're going to have another Viktor Orban blocking any kind of Ukraine help. And I just remind the audience that as we speak, it's still 7 billion euros being blocked by Hungary within the EU institutions. So Jana, let's see how good of a diplomat you are and try to answer this question.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'll start by saying that I think Prime Minister Orban is not old, and that's where I finish. I think you've asked about Slovakia's position, essentially. And I want to make 2 points. Yes, the Slovakia had elections last year. We have new government. We have still the same society. It's still the same society that opened its hearts and homes to all the Ukrainians who were fleeing the full-scale invasion on the 24th of February 2 years ago. And that matters. That's still something that resonates within the society in terms of support, humanitarian collection activities they're still doing for Ukraine. I mean, talking about the Czech ammunition initiative, once the government refused to contribute to these initiatives, there's actually a public collection collecting money for the same ammunition, and the contribution now is bigger than some of the governments that provided money to this initiative. So that's first, people are still the same. As for the government, I would say 2 things. I mean, first, Slovakia from the onset of the war until now has been per capita one of the biggest providers of military assistance to Ukraine. We donated the air defense system at a time when everybody else was talking about potential escalation if that happens. Together with Poland, Slovakia was the first country to provide fighter jets to Ukraine, long before the F-16s are supposed to arrive to Ukraine. So a lot of that, what could have been donated, had been donated already. The new government have stopped those donations. It's not stopping any other form of assistance, financial, humanitarian, but also military on a commercial basis. That is something that I think is important to pinpoint. I mean, when you're talking about blocking, it wasn't the Slovak Prime Minister who had to leave the room in February for the EU to agree the 50 billion package for Ukraine. And I think the government has been very vocal about ensuring that and actually increasing the support for Ukraine's European Union ambitions, and also the bilateral document that the two governments have just agreed on, I think a month ago, talks about continued support for Ukraine's European and Euro-Atlantic ambitions. So I think that kind of lays where the real, concrete, practical steps are at the moment, despite the political rhetoric and narratives which are different.
So your assumption is that despite that rhetorics may change, the practical steps or the steps in reality won't change that much in the future?
I'm a foreign policy advisor to the president for another 3 days, so I can make a guess for another 3 days, and then I'll speak as an analyst. No, I mean, seriously, I mean, I cannot judge what's going to happen in the future, but I think that it's important to recognize that when it comes to concrete steps to this point, actually, and I'm putting aside the rhetoric, which I personally think is not helping in recognizing the scale of the problem and potential risks also to Slovakia from Russia's invasion. I think the practical steps on the ground have been much more of a continuity than it meets the eye. I think that is my question. My second point, which I wanted to make very clearly and very shortly, is a different one. I think, and some of the speakers alluded to that already. This is not, I mean, Slovakia is a neighboring country. We are discussing, and we've been discussing potential ways of supporting Ukraine for a very long time. I mean, I remember some of the discussions in 2014, right after the first invasion of Ukraine. And I think the biggest difference now for Europe, and especially the European Union and member states, is that we have an agency in this, right? This is not something that's happening to a country that's far away. The way we contribute, how much we support Ukraine, is going to directly impact the outcome on the ground. And I think that that recognition has probably been too slow, especially in the beginning, but it is there now. And what we are doing as the European Union and as NATO in terms of beefing up that support, financial, economic, military, investing into our own capacities, because the truth is that a lot of what we could have donated out of our warehouses is gone, right? We need to replenish that. Those are the real steps. I wish we were taking more of them and faster, but we are on a track where we were not 2 years ago.
Thank you. Before I give you the floor to react to each other, if you feel like, I would like to remind the audience that you can ask questions via Slido. I already see some, so don't be hesitant, ask question, and the one that I like the most, of course, I will ask. To be honest, I'm joking, but obviously I will try to ask or use the most relevant or interesting question, which will be the last 15 minutes of our discussion. But now, over to you. So, Oleksandr, you wanted to react to anyone? No, I think I thought you were also like raising your head, or maybe, no? Jaroslav?
No, I can. Because these 2 days are rather of Czechoslovak nature, to confirm that it is important that we keep on talking to each other. That's President Pavel's view on the things. Today and yesterday we had relatively easy job with President Čaputová. We will have the new Slovak president in town in a couple of weeks as well. And I consider it to be of utmost importance that we set a line of direct communication between the two presidents to have frank exchanges, to give each other early alerts and try to help influencing the debate. Of course, it takes two to tango, but I definitely think it's worth giving it a chance so that our two countries that are like-minded on so many other things at least understand the positions of each other and maybe try to influence each other as well.
Maybe to Oleksandr and Jonas, still on the ammunition initiative, what's your stance here? Do you think it's, according to your knowledge, obviously, from the ground there, is it the thing that Ukraine needs or lacks the most, the ammunition, or is it rather the personnel?
War is extremely complicated, and the war in Ukraine, very much so. Things are changing. Obviously, you can mention the drone war, which is, of course, a substantial part of the war. And again, mind you, again, as I told, if you don't have ammunition, you replace with other things, such as drones. So drones is a very, very important. And also, another thing, this is what? Have you seen, what is this? This is an anti-drone made in Lithuania and actually imported via Slovakia, by the way. You are the great guys on that one.
How much does it cost?
This is for about 2,000 euros, something like that. So but everybody asks for it. Everybody asks for it. However, the war is also it's fortifications, it's infantry, it's artillery. These like basic standard parts of a war are still there. And yes, definitely ammunition is very much needed. But there are also, we talk about 155, but also another big issue right now is like mortars, 120 or 81 or maybe 82 millimeter. This is a standard infantry weapon. And I have even units that are buying their own mortars in Turkey because they can't get them because they're not there. So this war is, when you get into the details of it, you see it's extremely complicated. Again, I'm going back to one of the biggest reasons, but the things that Ukraine reasons now is basically training. They need to mobilize, they need to make the people, the newcomers actually fit for fight. That is a big issue. We as an organization, we have our own training instructors facility in Ukraine. You may think, I don't know, Blackwater or something like that. I'm a civilian NGO in Lithuania, and we are doing that because it's not being done. But again, I mean, one of the biggest issues, this question that you're asking, everybody, I mean, I have military people, decision makers, general staff people in various countries in Europe asking me this, and they say, why are you asking? Go there yourselves. You go there, you will understand what this war is about. I can give you one story here. I told with a sergeant in the 25th Brigade a couple of weeks ago. I said, you know, Jonas, this war, everything is upside down relating to artillery shells. In a normal war, you have airstrikes, artillery, and then infantry. In Ukraine, it's infantry, then maybe artillery, and maybe at the end of the day, a couple of airstrikes. Everything is navpaki. It's Ukrainian for the other way around. We don't get that in the West. If we were there, we would.
Oleksandr, according to numbers we can check at least a bit, the Russian government, or president, I should rather say, has mobilized 1.5% of Russian people ready to fight in a way. But you did mobilize nearly to 3%, or close to 3% of population, if the numbers are right. What's the situation with enough of personnel fighting there on the ground?
For us, fighting with the state that obviously in multiple times bigger than us is obviously a great task, and it is really difficult. We have modifying our legislation on the mobilization. We fighting the Russian propaganda that are fighting with our mobilization processes, with all processes inside Ukraine. And of course, last month, thanks to the newest approaches, last month we mobilized more men to our armed forces that from the beginning of the year. And the situation is hard, but we are, of course, doing everything possible in this direction also.
Jonas, you wanted to react to it?
I can actually comment on that from a military statistics perspective. We look at this all. I can give away how we think. Are you ready to die for democracy? Maybe. That sounds nice, right? Are you ready to kill for democracy? That's a much more tricky question. We'll look at the mobilization at Russia as a country, how to actually stall them, how to actually, make them stop making progress. Because the figure is very simple, and you can write this down. If we helped Ukraine to kill or eliminate 2,500 Russian soldiers per day, it would not become sustainable for them. 2,500 Russian soldiers a day.
Is it doable, if I may use a very cynical term?
Oh yes, it's doable. But it's
how?
Also...
airstrikes?
Airstrikes, drones, artillery, various kinds of combined arms, as it's called, various it's about, and now we count like about 1,000 a day. If we could raise that to 2,005. I'm talking about war not from the helping perspective, but from a fighting perspective. And sometimes I think these perspectives would be useful also for European Union to consider. If we had that kind of mindset, how would we act then?
Monika, do we have a mindset of that kind that the EU would indeed support weapons that would terminate 2,500 Russian soldiers on the ground every day?
Within the EU, if we talk about the EU institutions, it is clear that there is no time for complacency when it comes to the help to Ukraine, that there is, of course, needed ammunition, artillery, air defense, and all these initiatives, like the Czech ammunition initiative or the German air defense initiatives are very much important. But what is also important to give a hope to Ukraine and the perspective. And here I would like to remind a little bit the memory jogger that it was in November when the European Commission proposed to the member states to open the negotiations with Ukraine and acknowledge the accession status to Ukraine, and leaders under 4 conditions. Of course, there were 4 issues which the Ukraine fulfilled according to the enlargement report. And there is still hope that within 2 weeks, the leaders will agree on starting the accession negotiations. So this is rather the perspective of the EU, not thinking about how many people needs to be killed. But I fully agree that the numbers here, thanks for that.
Jana Kobzová, do you think that the Slovakian government, Slovakia being, say, on the road, like physical road between the West and the East, between the West and Ukraine, do you think the government would ever allow a transportation of thousands of helpers from the West going to Ukraine?
I can't speak for the government. I think the government has already allowed a lot of transit of a lot of things that are going into Ukraine, as you have seen from my co-panelist. I think, when you talk about what can be done and how, I think it's 2 things. If you look at all the statistics coming from Russia, and we can take it with a pinch of salt, right? But it's clear that what Russia is trying to demonstrate and is doing is demonstrating its staying power. Basically saying, we are in for too long, you better get tired of it, and Ukraine better negotiate now because it's going to get worse. I think we need to do the reverse and show that actually we have the staying power, right? We do have it in terms of economics. We need to catch up on our military power, and we need to invest our own defense so we can also help Ukrainians. That's first. Second, I think we have been very good in deterring ourselves. I think we need to start deterring Russia more from proceeding onwards. That's second. And third, what I wanted to bring up, besides the military statistics, the human cost of this war in Ukraine is enormous. And when we talk about a war and how we help end it on terms which are good for international law, good for us, because those are the rules that we want to apply, and we want them to be applied everywhere, not just in Ukraine, right? We want no country to invade its neighbor just because they please. We don't want that happening in Europe. We don't want that happening in Africa. We don't want that happening in other parts of the world. We're talking about how to end the suffering of millions of people physical or mental. There is no family in Ukraine that's not affected. There is no family which doesn't have father, cousin, son, either on the front line, mobilized, or hurt by the war, physically, mentally, forever. And this is something that I think needs to be taken account when we're talking about this war. We sometimes forget that besides those numbers, there are real people who have lost their loved ones, who have lost people. It's not just about territory, it's about the most important resource Ukraine has as its people. Part of them are occupied. And I think we, as the European Union, when we're talking about assisting Ukraine, we need to think how to help end that suffering in a way that doesn't allow Mr. Putin to invade Ukraine again in 3 years from now. That is our own security interest. That is something we need to work on if we are talking about peace.
I think it's a very good point mentioning that actually we're talking about real suffering, real people dying every day. Sometimes I think us in the West, we tend to look at Ukraine as if a new series on Netflix, right? Where you can sort of switch off between comedy and tragedy, etc. Jaroslav wanted to react to it. So Jaroslav, floor is yours.
No, just that in order to reach peace, you have all the relevant parties the willingness to come to the table. Now, we'll be going over this weekend to Switzerland for this peace summit. Russia's not there. Russia was invited at the beginning. The temperature was tested. They said no. Why did they say no? Because they don't feel they would gain anything with the talks. That means because they feel they are on the winning side, that they maybe count on some kind of outcome in the United States in November. But it really takes to tango. We cannot just, agree that we want peace beyond the heads of Ukraine without really a motivation for the Russians to sit at the table. And that's why we need to help Ukraine winning in their fight, because that's the only way the deterrence on our side and help to the Ukrainians so that Russia understands that they cannot gain anything by continuing waging the war. It's as simple as that, and that's why we have to do our utmost to help Ukraine winning on the ground.
Oleksandr wanted to react to you.
Just want to underline one important issue. In line with the all help and assistance that our partners providing to us, this is crucially important to underline and tell about all the great work that we are now in parallel with the war, that we are doing to ensure that all the assistance will be used with the great responsibility, transparency, and in a maximum efficient approach. For example, for the theme of this week, for the restoration, we have the Ukraine Recovery Conference in these days and yesterday. The main, we developed the ecosystem, the digital recovery ecosystem for accountable management. It's literally the single window to monitor all the reconstruction projects in the whole Ukraine, from the beginning till the ending, through the financing, through the procurement, and all the things. Our main approach is to allow everyone sees everything, because transparency also can mobilize the civil society, the NGOs, and also our partners to also to monitor all the things and eliminate all the possible way for corruption or inefficiencies in the recovery processes. And we also developed all the digital instruments to ensure transparency in the planning, in the spatial planning, for the strategy for the regional development of our regions, and to ensure, to maintain and ensure the enlarging the capacities of all these instruments. This is our approach to make the use of all assistance the maximum efficient.
Thank you. Jaroslav, you touch upon the topic of the so-called summit or peace summit in Switzerland. I'm looking at the Slido now. Questions are pouring in, and one is actually about the meeting in Switzerland. So I would like you to answer the following one, and that it's: what are the expectations of the peace summit in Switzerland, especially so since some big players like Biden or some self-proclaimed peacemakers, and I quote, nice, some self-proclaimed peacemakers like China are not coming. So what shall we expect from Geneva summit?
Well, this summit not be the one where peace will be made, but it's very important that there is a large number, a critical mass of countries that will participate. Through that, and I believe we are now at the numbers close to 100 leaders and representatives of the countries of the world to demonstrate that they care about the values, they care about territorial integrity, they care about UN Charter and rules-based order. As simple as that, and if we are able to demonstrate that, that already sends a very strong signal. So this is, in my view, the most important thing. Of course, there will be some tangible results as well. On the agenda, there are 3 major topics: nuclear issues, nuclear safety and security. We know what this is about. We also speak about food security and the humanitarian situation. So it's important that these are parts of the peace formula proposed by Volodymyr Zelensky, and it's important that we can, at least in 3 areas, demonstrate something tangible. And definitely, you know that the role and the meeting of the working group that was dealing with nuclear issues met in this very house. It was rather a productive one, and definitely we will play a role as Czech Republic at that summit for sure. But most importantly, it's a start of a process that we hope at the end will lead to something tangible where all the relevant players will be around the table. As I said, right now the motivation of some is different. There is not enough incentives for anyone to come, but if we show this determination, if we show concrete progress, and if we set this peace process on a certain trajectory, already for me that will be a success.
Jonas, you wanted to react to it.
With all due respect, as you say, in this, of course, I appreciate the effort and for some unforeseeable future that may lead to something. At this point, however, 0 best case. We're talking about China, for instance. I can just give you one example of what I see. China, we encountered Chinese artillery ammunition in Ukraine backed with Iranian gunpowder. China is backfilling Iranian artillery shell supplies, and Iranian is providing it to Ukraine. So let's not have any illusions about how this. On the other hand, yes, you need to talk. Obviously, you need a counterpart, and Russia is not there. Just one thing about, one thing that really strikes me right now, we lack a vision of what we want to achieve in Ukraine. I'm telling you this all the time. What's the vision? What's the vision? I'm just giving, European Union, if we said that our goal as European Union is that Ukraine will be a full-fledged member of European Union, whatever it takes. If you said that and acted on that, well, I think things would change a little. I'm not hearing that.
Monika, Ladmanová, do you agree? If we say Ukraine as a member of the EU for whatever it takes, is it the solution? I would object, may not, because Ukraine needs security guarantees, which is a membership in NATO, I think, but we can elaborate on that as well. Monika, the first question to you, please.
Thank you. I've already said that there is a clear determination of the EU to enlarge and to welcome Ukraine in among itself, and and everybody repeats from the EU institutions that Ukraine belongs to Europe, that Kharkov is Europe, that Donetsk is Europe. So there is a clear process leading towards the accession, but it takes some steps which are now, as I've mentioned,
Whatever it takes, that's an condition.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Microphone.
What I'm saying, whatever it takes, that includes obviously security guarantees, European, NATO, whatever. That's like, we understand that security is one of the aspects, one of the modes that we have to look into if we are willing to say this, whatever it takes, obviously.
Look, I think that this conflict taught us all many lessons, and one of the most important lessons for EU is that we have to take much more greater responsibility for our own security.
True.
American historian Timothy Snyder said, if Ukraine is not given security guarantees by NATO, and it's going to be the case of individual member states, be it NATO or EU, giving those security guarantees, then we will be faced with nuclear proliferation and race of each and every state to fetch or buy or have their own nuclear weapons. Do you agree with this? Anyone? Ready? Jonas or Jaroslav, maybe?
First of all, it always gets interesting till the end, as you said. If this peace summit that is ahead of us was so unimportant, why would the Russians do their utmost to prevent others coming to that summit? They don't want this to be a success, for sure. And we know, because we from the presidential office and the president himself have actively helped with the outreach towards some of the countries. And it was very clear that many of them have been worked on heavily by countries like Russia and China. So we need to keep on fighting. We need to have as representative forum as possible that will stand behind what is necessary, and we can take it from there. On the nuclear option here, Russians have been extremely good always to insert the aspect of fear into negotiations. They count on us that we start fearing what can actually happen. But if you go back on all those red lines that Russia has imposed on us, they have blurred. They're pink, to say it diplomatically, if you look back. So at the beginning it was Sweden and Finland in NATO. They're there. What has really happened? Of course, a lot of provocation, yes, but then heavy artillery, that will be the red line. Nothing really much happened. Then long-range shooting missiles, things start happening. But what I want to suggest is that we shouldn't, fear lead our critical thinking.
Jana Kobzová was raising her hand.
Sorry, I think one thing that, there are many lessons, but I think one of the lessons we have learned already is that in Europe, leaving gray zones between Russia and the European Union or NATO is not a good idea, right? I think Moldovans and Georgians would probably agree together with the Ukrainians. Hence the offer of the EU membership, hence the determination on the part of NATO to continue its and keep that prospect of Ukraine joining NATO alive. I think to your question about security guarantees, of course, there is, once this war ends, and it will end one day, I think Ukrainians, first and foremost, would need to be reassured that this is not going to happen again. And I do think that part of the reason why Moscow and Mr. Putin is always signaling that he has a problem with NATO, because he understands that is the ultimate security guarantee that Ukraine needs in the end.
Jonas?
Again, with all due respect, I understand these processes, you need them. I'm not going to expect anything from this one, but sure, let's keep doing it. I'm not saying don't stop. I'm not going to stop fight. Don't stop negotiating, for God's sake. As for fears and future and whatnot, one thing I learned the very hard way in this war. As for Russia, and I have been doing some really crazy things over these 10 years. I've been involved in 10 years. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Russia, as the sluggish, crazy poker player they are, they back off. If you establish your goals and your visions, with, of course, the might and the power you have in your back. And I mean, I come from the Baltics and Scandinavia, sort of. Scandinavia and the Baltics together, they outnumber the GNP of Russia. That's one part, tiny part, region of Europe. I mean, hey, we are so much more than they are in so many different ways. If we say what we want to do, and we do it, Russia's going to back off. And the bottom line of that is, you know, security guarantees. For me personally, and I also think for countries like Czech, like Slovakia, imagine a free, prosperous, secure, stable Ukraine. It's a bigger security guarantee than even NATO. Let's turn things around a little.
With your very direct words, you reminded me of, and I hope you won't get offended, but you reminded me of Donald Trump, who always says, if you want to do something, let's do it, you know? So...
Okay,
yes?
Can I answer to that?
Yes?
I had this really, I've been in DC several times over the line, gonna switch to use accent for a while there. Now, I actually had some intercept with the Republicans, the rednecks as well. I actually went to a grill party with some MAGA people. And I realized something really funny. We were quite the same in some ways, you know. When things go south, you know, you could take things in your own hand, and you take up your gun, whatever. But the difference is, I'm all democracy. I respect democracy. I respect elections. I respect, you know, political systems, etc. I'm ready to die for it. I'm ready to kill for it if needed. That is a different, shall we say, sauce, that one. However, there are some similarities, yes. Some people call us, you know, the rebels of democracy. Yeah, I like that.
Let's say within then this part of the world, so United States, because we've been so far talking about our European reality and our European view on Ukraine, but there is something bigger going on, right? If we look at the second, what is it, second Thursday in November, yes? Okay, sorry. See, I'm a specialist in EU affairs, not American, so now you see the proof of it. Anyway, so United States presidential elections, how do you see dynamics of transatlantic relationships and the support for Ukraine changing? Shall Donald Trump win the elections again? Someone? Anyone? Jana? Jana is smiling, so maybe Jana knows the answer.
Got the best questions today, thank you. I'd say this. I think, you know, for now, U.S. has been quintessential to Ukraine staying where it is and defending itself together with the EU. I mean, it's an illusion to think that Europe can continue to support Ukraine on its own, and it's also an illusion that the U.S. can do it on its own. We need to stay together. I think it's too early to see who's going to win on November 5th. That's first, but I think I would look at what President Trump did during his first term. And there's a lot of talk about his attitude to NATO. There is a lot of talk about his attitude to Europe. But I think we have to acknowledge that actually he has done, intentionally or not, the most to increase European spending on defense, right? And investment into our own capacities, which for a very long time have been totally reliant on the US. And that needs to change anyway. He has had his relations and dealings, including with President Zelensky. May I remind everyone that it was actually President Trump who approved the first supplies of weapons to Ukraine. Javelins were delivered to Ukraine during Trump's presidency. So I think it might be different. And we all heard about him negotiating and having that deal, but I think we will need to see what that means in practice. The best thing we can do for the time being as the Europeans, irrespective of who is in the White House, is to keep demonstrating that staying power I talked about before, both in Ukraine and in the European Union, investing into our own capacities. We have been reliant on other players for far too long, and we have been too dependent on developments which are out of our control. And I think that is something that's a momentum for us to change that.
Jaroslav?
An important moment, of course, will be the NATO summit that is ahead of us, and I 100% agree. If there is something to say on a constructive, positive side when it comes to Donald Trump, is that through his rhetoric, that is for many difficult to accept, but he managed to convince Europeans that they need to invest more. He used, not diplomatic terms, but he managed. Look, we are now talking about 2%. Look where we were in 2014. There was 3 countries that had over 2%. Now it will be over 20 allies reaching their defense spending target and going beyond in many respects. So if anything, I think it's very important to demonstrate that us Europeans, each country, but us Europeans are not the black passengers of security, as simple as that. And if there is help to Ukraine as well, that we are able to do a lot of things on our own. We have witnessed what it meant when US was out for some month, and we still feel the results of it. It's clearly we cannot do it without the Americans. But on the other hand, this lesson has showed us that the investment into security is the one that should rather bring us closer to the States. And that's number 1 point. Number 2 point is that we as Europeans should also be able to demonstrate that we are able to work with the United States to deal with global issues, including China. So us as a country of 10 million people, we still have enough business interests to do in the United States. Czech companies are already employing dozens of thousands of Americans, so that's one line to be stressed. Second line is that we realize what is at stake and we invest into it, and we are ready to help the Americans with trying to solve other problems.
Please keep your microphone still up. Question to you. The Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, said just yesterday, I think, that it's going to be NATO now who is going to coordinate weapons supply to Ukraine. Shall we understand it as a sign of strength of NATO or as a weakness, since the United States is going into pre-election campaign period? So everybody's going to be busy politically, and so NATO is taking over, but NATO is basically United States. So how shall we understand that diplomatic sort of a move?
It's a brave statement that NATO is the United States. When we will have assessed the outcome of the NATO summit, I do believe, based on what I know right now, that there will be a fair distribution and burden sharing. That's number one, and that NATO takes over the coordination or the mission, as it's called now. I only think that is a good thing. It will be better coordinated. The allies will be around. Hopefully, all allies will be around it. So either consider this to be a strength than a weakness.
Jonas, yes.
Great. Let's NATO raise to the challenge. I know many officers in NATO in various countries, various levels of where they understand. Give them the chance. It's showtime, basically. So we must understand, and also I think what the good thing about it pulls the whole thing a little closer to us. NATO is actually here, like Brussels, etc., etc. Americans waiting for them to figure things out, right? Well, from a European perspective, from an Eastern European perspective, yes, great friends, but we need to do much more ourselves. And we can do things. European Union, we just had an election, right? How do politics work in the US? We know how that's work like. Time to court our Europarliamentarians, time to court their personal Republican. Go to DC to actually create relationships. Why are we having this European Parliament, for that kind of stuff? let our European parliamentarians court their Republicans, because the Republicans are more or less okay, you know. And actually, because if you do that, if you talk to them, things happen. Now, I'm gonna give myself some praise. Look at article number 2 in the latest delivery package to Ukraine. Number 2, kind of weird. How did this one come there? Number 2.
Interesting.
It's an intrigue, yeah.
Now, Oleksandr, a question to you from Slido. That is, what can we expect from Belarus? We haven't spoken about Belarus as of until now. So, in Ukraine, do you fear any possible attack coming from Belarus also, or is it more threat to Poland than to you?
We evaluate Belarus as also the aggressor country, so we believe that Russians can do anything from everywhere. We can be thinking that we are safe from some of the directions, including the whole border with the Republic of Belarus.
And do you think it's a threat to Poland as well?
This level, it's hard to evaluate the future, how the things will happen. Because from the first point of view, it's obviously no, because the Poland is the NATO's member, and it's the other part. It's not the part of direct of the war. But last more than 2 years teach us that there are no boundaries, no borders, and no red lines for Russians.
Okay. Another question too, and it concerns the reconstruction of Ukraine. Is it something that may be appealing as a business opportunity for European companies, that sort of you can sell, in parentheses, sell the support for Ukraine in explaining to European firms and society, saying, look, help us now, because then you can invest in Ukraine and you do business well. What do you think?
Sure, it's absolutely right. I'm once more inviting everyone to get familiar with our dream ecosystems. Anyone can go to the website dream.gov.ua. There are a lot of informations. There are more than 4,000 of projects already there, with all the information about the procurements, about the financing. Nearly 1,000 of projects are already have insured finances. We have different sources right now. It's the already established Ukraine facility. This is loans and grants from IFIs. This is costs from the frozen Russians assets in Ukraine. So all the European companies, they already can take part and implement some projects, or even the part of different reconstruction projects in Ukraine. As I already said, we are doing unprecedented work to make the maximum possible transparency of the all reconstruction processes. So these investments, this work, this doing the tendering, it will be a maximum possible safe and efficient for everyone. So we are inviting every European company already to take part in the Ukraine's reconstruction.
In which regions? I don't think you can invite them to Donbas.
Sure, the security situations are different, but the first motto, the main approach our reconstruction, the first goal that we need to achieve is to ensure the possibility of full socio-economic life for our people. So the housing, the water supply, the energy grid must be restored to let the people the possibility to stay there, to work, to pay taxes, not to become refugees in other regions or IDPs or refugees to Europe. Because also with the other initiatives like solidarity lanes. There are many things that we are doing with the help of EU to ensure the maximum possible stability of Ukraine's economy nowadays, because we need taxes, we need budget, because not every expenditures for the war, for the wages of soldiers can be financed from the money of our partners.
Thank you. Monika wanted to have a floor.
Just to complement what was just said, that this week there are many events happening. It's a very heavy week, not only the mentioned peace conference over the weekend, but also, of course, this conference today, Prague European Summit, the G7 meeting, as we speak. There were also important decisions taken regarding the use of frozen Russian assets. But the recovery conference in Berlin on Monday and Tuesday, and there, again, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced 1.4 billion as a guarantee for banks to make sure that for investors who wants to invest in the recovery of Ukraine are available.
Monika, still a question to you. Ukraine has been for a long time related not with war but with corruption in many hats of many Western European people. There is anti-corruption plan and already been executed, but some people, even within European institutions, doubt that anti-corruption fight and saying maybe us Europeans, we overstretch it too much, that we want Ukraine to fight corruption if actually she needs to fight a real war. So question to you, did we really overstretch it? Are we asking too much? Maybe if you look at what's the situation in Prague or in the Czechia concerning corruption, you know, maybe, I don't say we would need war to fight it, but
you have to ask Oleksandr if
both.
If
I will ask both. Don't worry, but
For
first
me,
to you.
What was asked and demanded by Ukraine was fulfilled by now, this anti-oligarchs legal framework, the lobbying kind of rules. So obviously it was doable while always keeping the fight ongoing. We know that Ukraine does a remarkable effort and on so many strands. So I think that it's a question of course, striking the right balance. And so far, the demands from the EU are fulfilled. Hence, we can just assess that it is doable. But maybe Oleksandr can say.
Indeed, Oleksandr, is this something that is holding you back to fight more aggressively, so to say, or more effectively, or not?
Of course, we now need to fight in the war, so all possible resources must be mobilized for the war. Therefore, we have now zero tolerance to any corruptions. This is why all these initiatives about the transparency on the all stages are implemented really fast. And we established a few, also with the recommendations of the European Union in framework of enlargement package. We established a few anti-corruption agencies, and they have no mercy.
Okay, Jonas, what is your experience with so to say systemic corruption in Ukraine on the ground as you're leader of NGO or boss of NGO?
It exists. It definitely has an impact on the war in a negative way. There are many things that could do to enhance the war effort. And I'm telling everybody again, you know, in order to actually decrease corruption and become more efficient, work as, you know, supporting the Ukrainian forces, support the units directly, let's say brigade level. If you would do that, you would have a much other dynamics and of course a much better understanding what's going on to, so to speak, decentralize the support effort. But that said, Ukraine is alive and kicking. And I probably going to add something from a Lithuanian perspective. I have been living there for a very long time and at these Baltic states, etc. In the 90s, it was just as bad. No war, obviously, but things were horrible like that. What really changed this dynamics of corruption actually brought to one of the most biggest success stories of the European Union, the Baltic states. It was, guess what? Entering the European Union in 2004. That changed the dynamic rapidly. So there are also other ways to look at this. Yes, there are things we've got to deal with it, but hey, let's do it. And then, let's change the dynamics.
Okay, Jana Kobzová.
Thanks. I think I just want to dwell on what was said and kind of recognize the Ukrainian resilience, which is staggering for European standards. I mean, normally, show me another country in the world which is fighting a full-scale invasion and at the same time asking the EU to do more and faster on its screening of its legislation, right? And introducing electronic permission for construction at the same time. Right, and this is Ukraine. This is the beauty of it. This is the resilience of the government, but also of its people and the society. And I think, time sometimes flows differently in Ukraine than it does here. It's faster. In the beginning, what you've seen in a lot of other countries facing the war was the collapse of the central government, right? Run on banks. None of that happened in Ukraine. Central government was working. The administration was working at a time when renowned international humanitarian organizations, including the UN, were scrambling to find their way to Ukraine and work there and operate under the conditions of the full-scale war. That's number one. Number two, corruption. As was said, no country is probably immune to it. I think we also need to see the trajectory. Over the past 10 years, there's been an improvement in all international rankings. That doesn't mean corruption doesn't exist, but it also means that Ukraine has, partly because of its objective to join the European Union, partly just good for the country, has invested in building those strong anti-corruption institutions and institutional framework. So I think that we are in a situation as the European Union we haven't been before, because the pace of preparation and the pace of what Ukraine is doing to fulfill those conditions, either before starting the accession talks or adopting the acquis communautaire afterwards, is a bit of a different speed than what we've had with most of the other accession processes that we've had. We had a bit of a different
Jaroslav wanted to react and then Monika. Yeah, Jaroslav and then Monika.
To complement again, words of appreciation towards Ukraine and what Madame Stefanishina and her team have been doing. The process of EU accession by itself is a healing in many respects. We have witnessed it here, many countries have witnessed that, so I would just very much hope that by the end of this month, Ukraine really will be able to open the accession talks. It's not a given. There have been numerous conditions before every chapter is open, and I do believe that Ukraine has done all it can and could to meet those requirements that EU has set up on them. But really, I'm surprised how well organized, how determined the team working on the topic. But it's not just the team; it's the whole system that really wants to fulfill the criteria to really be on a path towards full EU membership. Of course, as everyone has said, Ukraine is not immune to corruption. Who is? But see a lot of improvement, and also in the future something like the Marshall Plan again will come, and the EU will be very much behind this. This is exactly what should be linked. We help reconstruct, we help you get back on track, on your feet, but there are some basic conditions that need to be fulfilled. So far, I'm rather optimistic.
Monika?
A little addition and maybe a food for thought. Ukraine did not only fulfill the conditions and criteria it was asked for to fulfill to start the accession negotiations, but also, for example, finalized its accession to the Council of Europe Convention on Protection and Prevention of Women from the Gender-Based Violence, the so-called Istanbul Convention. So I will leave it there.
Very popular document here in Czechia. So we have last 5 minutes, and I suggest we proceed as follows. I have a question here from Slido, so from the audience. that has the more likes, and you all know that we live in an era of likes. Everybody needs likes. So, the most likes has the following question. What is the main obstacle that prevents the West to ramp up its military support to Ukraine in a way, and now that it's important, in a way that it would force Russia to come to the negotiating table? So basically a question, what would force Russia to come for real to the negotiating table? And I would like each of you to give the audience a short answer. Jonas.
2,500 per day.
Thank you for being so direct. Jana.
It was far too quick for me. I think it's us getting really serious about the defense industries, which we have neglected, with few exceptions, for a very long time. As long as Russia doesn't see there is a staying power, as long as it thinks that it can just tire us down, they're not going to negotiate in a sincere way.
Yes, Monika?
The clear and ongoing support from the democratic world to Ukraine.
Maybe it's sad, but personally I am sure that Russia not really able to negotiate because their goals are completely different. That those that we couldn't understand and evaluate in the civilized world. So the answer is just showing them power. Nothing else helps.
So you don't believe in peace being negotiated at negotiating table?
There are no rational arguments that can accept. It's my personal opinion. So I agree with that we started for.
So I see we have, I don't know if consensus, but sort of a raising majority for a 2,500 solution per day. Jaroslav.
Courage by the leaders and maybe surprisingly good economic conditions when I speak about European countries, because what most important after all for many politicians, not necessarily statesmen, is not to completely lose the public support. And if the citizens have an understanding or feel that they are less and less well off, and they are promised that it will get better once peace is installed, that's a narrative that has to be defied. But it can only happen when we all do collectively better in economic terms. Then the public support will not be losing. Politicians will be braver.
Okay, since this is important, since we have still 3 minutes, you are faster than I expected. Let's have another, what the French call tour de table, and answer the first part of the question, and that is, what are the obstacles to the solution that we just described? Jonas.
The unwillingness of politicians to realize that we are at war.
What politicians? The Western, American, European?
Western politicians, yeah, European Union. We are at war. Not as we expected, not as we would like to, but unfortunately we are at war in some respects. And we have to accept that. When we do that, then things are going to change.
Jana?
So I agree, but I do think that the biggest obstacle to peace is Russia.
Monika?
Yeah, the unclarity of some in the Western world, the democratic world, in where the power is in the region.
Oleksandr.
Yes, the main obstacle is the hope of some politicians that they have an options to be aside and just watch.
And Jaroslav?
I would say a lack of determination on the side of many politicians in Europe that do not fully realize what is at stake still and what may come should Ukraine not win.
Okay, thank you very much. So our time is up. This is the moment where I should call it a day. So let's thank Jonas, Ohman, Monika Ladmanová, Jana Kobzová, Monika, Ladmanová, Oleksandr, Nikolaiev, and Jaroslav Zajíček for taking part in this panel. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and I wish you all a very nice day. Thank you.